Hey man, there's something most men never fully understand until they've been hurt, betrayed, or left, wondering how someone they trusted could change overnight. And that's this: women live in a world that doesn't exist. Not because they're evil, and not because they're delusional, but because their perception of reality is emotional, not logical. They don't see things as they are. They see things as they feel they are. Their truth shifts with their emotions, and the moment her feelings change, so does her reality. When she says she loves you, she means it, in that moment. But if her emotions shift a week later, if the excitement fades, if the spark softens, she'll act like she never said it. Because in her world, truth isn't permanent, it's fluid, it bends to emotion. That's why a woman can cry in your arms one night, then act like you're invisible the next. You're trying to connect through consistency. She's connecting through how she feels right now. You've got to understand, for her, feelings create facts. If she feels ignored, you are ignoring her. If she feels unloved, you don't love her. If she feels betrayed, you betrayed her, even if you didn't. In her mind, emotion overrides evidence. That's why arguing with her logic doesn't work, because you're arguing with shifting weather. One moment it's sunny, the next it's storming, and she'll swear both were real. Men make the mistake of trying to fix women with facts. You think, if I explain myself clearly, she'll understand. But the more you explain, the more she interprets. She's not listening to your words, she's listening to how your energy feels while you speak. If your tone changes, if your eyes flicker, if your calm wavers, she'll sense it, and her mind will create an emotional story to match. You can't win by proving, you win by detaching. Women don't live in a physical world of logic, they live in an emotional world of perception. That's why they can rewrite history in their heads and believe it. It's why one day she'll say you were the best thing that ever happened to her, and a month later she'll tell her friends you were controlling, cold, or distant. She's not lying, she's reinterpreting the past through her present feelings. This is why the same woman who once said she could never live without you suddenly acts like she never knew you, because her mind needs to rewrite the story to justify her emotions. Her guilt turns into victimhood, her regret turns into blame, her memories turn into selective edits. She's not living in the same world you're in. She's living in a narrative her emotions create to protect her from accountability. You can't take her contradictions personally. Her inconsistency isn't intentional, it's biological. Women survive through emotional adaptability. They evolve to read feelings, not facts, because emotion once kept them safe. But that same instinct now makes modern relationships unstable. When she feels safe, she's loving. When she feels threatened, she's distant. When she feels ignored, she'll test you. Her entire behavior shifts with her inner temperature. That's why the strongest move a man can make is emotional stability, because while she's floating through her feelings, you stand on solid ground. The moment you start mirroring her instability, she loses respect for you. The masculine role isn't to chase her emotions, it's to stay rooted while she spins. You become the anchor in her storm, not another gust of wind feeding it. But here's the dark side. Her emotional world isn't just reactive, it's creative. She'll create stories in her mind to justify how she feels. If she's bored, she'll create drama. If she's insecure, she'll imagine betrayal. If she's guilty, she'll paint you as controlling. That's how she balances her emotional world, by projecting inner conflict onto external targets. And if you don't understand that, you'll spend your life trying to fix problems that only exist in her imagination. You've probably noticed it before, that sudden shift. One week she's sweet, the next she's cold. You start questioning yourself, wondering what changed. But nothing external changed. What changed was the story in her head. Maybe her hormones shifted. Maybe a friend planted an idea. Maybe her insecurities flared up. Whatever the cause, the effect is the same. She rewrites your character to match her mood. You'll try to reason with her, thinking logic can reset the emotional narrative. But logic doesn't translate in her world. You'll show evidence, she'll show emotion. You'll quote facts, she'll quote feelings. And in the end, she'll believe her side more deeply than anything you could ever prove. Because emotion is self-validating, it feels true, so it is true. That's why women are drawn to mystery. A man they can't fully read feels safer than a man they can predict. Predictability makes her feel control, and control kills attraction. But mystery keeps her emotional world alive. It allows her to keep rewriting the story, and as long as she can keep doing that, she stays engaged. It's paradoxical. The less you give her to understand, the longer she stays interested. When you start to understand her world, everything makes sense. You stop being shocked by her contradictions. You stop arguing. You stop chasing reassurance. Instead, you start watching. You observe her emotional cycles without trying to control them. You realize that her world changes daily, but yours doesn't have to. That's when you become powerful, because now you're not reacting to her emotions, you're mastering yours. The reason men suffer in relationships isn't because women are cruel. It's because men expect emotional consistency from people who aren't built for it. You think loyalty means staying the same through every mood. But for her, loyalty means feeling right in the moment. If she feels unloved today, she'll act like she's unloved, even if you did everything right yesterday. Emotion resets logic every sunrise. That's why the calm man always wins. Because while other men panic, trying to decode her mood swings, he watches quietly. He doesn't overreact. He doesn't chase. He doesn't take things personally. He lets her live in her world, while he lives in his, a world of discipline, direction, and peace. And that polarity creates attraction. Because deep down, she doesn't want you to join her chaos. She wants to feel safe in your order. You can't change her world. You can only choose how you engage with it. If you try to fix her emotions, you drown. If you try to control them, you fight forever. But if you stand still, detached, and compassionate, she starts to orbit your calm. Because your stillness reminds her that not every storm needs a reaction. That's the masculine role, to be the silent lighthouse, not the sailor panicking in waves. The world she lives in is emotional fiction, stories built to make her feelings make sense. If she feels abandoned, she'll remember only the moments you weren't there. If she feels betrayed, she'll rewrite memories to support it. It's not deception, it's emotional self-preservation. But once you see it, once you stop personalizing it, you reclaim your sanity. And when you finally stop chasing understanding, you start attracting respect. Because women test men's emotions instinctively, not to hurt them, but to feel where their strength ends. Every outburst, every silent treatment, every contradiction is a test. Can you hold your center when I lose mine? Fail that test, and she loses attraction. Pass it, and she feels both safe and humbled. Most men mistake emotional control for coldness. It's not, it's wisdom. Because love without control becomes slavery, and empathy without boundaries becomes manipulation. When you stay calm in her chaos, you're not being distant, you're being deliberate. You're refusing to let her emotional world pull you into a reality that doesn't exist. Her world will always be emotional. That's her design. She feels before she thinks, reacts before she reasons, believes before she verifies. That's not weakness, that's nature. But your job isn't to match that energy. It's to complement it, to bring clarity where there's confusion, to bring direction where there's drift, to bring stillness where there's storm. Once you understand that her emotional world isn't personal, you stop resenting her. You stop taking offense at her moods. You stop expecting permanent validation from temporary feelings. You start to see her as she is. A storm that doesn't mean harm, but can still sink ships if you don't learn to steer away from it. And that perspective saves you from bitterness. When you detach from her emotions, you start to value your own. You begin to realize that your peace isn't selfish, it's sacred. That not every argument deserves your words. That not every accusation needs defense. That sometimes silence teaches louder than logic. And in that silence, she starts to see your value, not because you explained it, but because you embodied it. Eventually, she'll come back down from her emotional world, confused, reflective, maybe even regretful. She'll wonder how you stayed calm when she lost control. That curiosity becomes attraction, because deep down, every woman craves a man who doesn't lose himself in her chaos. A man whose love is stable, not reactive, and that's when she begins to trust you. Not because you always agree, but because you always stay. So don't chase understanding from someone living in emotional fiction. Let her world spin, let her moods rise and fall. Your job isn't to fix it, it's to hold your line. Because the moment you leave your world to enter hers, you lose yourself. And when a man loses himself, he loses everything. respect, power, peace. Remember this, women live in a world that doesn't exist, a world built from feelings, not facts. You can't live there. You can only visit with awareness. Love her, but stay grounded. Listen, but don't absorb. Care, but don't chase. Because the man who understands the difference between her emotions and reality doesn't just survive relationships, he masters them. He becomes what every woman secretly desires, and every lost man forgets to be, a calm force in a world driven by emotion.